Let's take garbage and make it shine. This whole project is asinine. Waste some time with me, I can guarantee this old junk will soon toe the line.
We're polishing turds, mediocrity curd. I can't find the words, this song is absurd. We're polishing turds, we're polishing turds.
All right, real good stuff, doors. Today we're going to look at one of the last big pieces of the puzzle in our small block Chevrolet build, and that is the intake manifold. Cody has this amazing chunk of Chinesium right here. That's his intake manifold, and it's just a rip-off of some, you know, Edelbrock stuff or whatever. There's nothing particularly terrible about it that stands out to me other than that.
China?
But it's an opportunity for some improvement here. So if you look inside, you'll notice that it pretty much looks like the inside of your header manifold in here. It looks like an exhaust manifold, and that's because the old motor probably had did have quite a bit of reversion going on, and that's basically airflow that's stacked up in the cylinder and can't get out that well. So when you don't efficiently blow down the cylinder enough, there's still exhaust in there when you open the intake valve back up to take more air in, right? And hopefully we've alleviated some of that with these super HED Blowmasters with their improved exhaust porting and so forth. That'll help. But another thing we can do just in general to look for power here is this manifold, and as you can see, the intake port on this thing is much smaller than our new Blowmaster ports. Cross section is a fraction of what these are, and that's definitely a place where we can find some power. So we're gonna open this up significantly. I'll try to kind of document before and after so you can kind of see what I'm doing in there. But another place is the plenum here. Now this is a single plane manifold, and what they try to do is kind of even up the runner lengths so that everything's even Steven. And sometimes they do this at the expense of plenum volume, right? Which on a lot of motors is not, you know, the end of the world. And if you run a, you know, let's say that you got this on a bracket motor like the first season of Polishing Turds, you may kind of want that because you want the motor to make some torque at 4,000, so it comes off the converter good and pulls through, and you know, doesn't require that it stay in a 500 RPM range like a Pro Stock engine, right? You got to have a little broader power band, and that's what these longer runners will do. Now we're in a different situation. We got a blower. We're going to have an abundance at that RPM. Matter of fact, to manage it, we're probably going to have to pull timing out and ramp it back in to get down the racetrack, right? So if we hurt things there a little bit, it won't. We'll never know the difference, right? But in my opinion, on this type of deal, a lot of times it won't even hurt anything there. It can even help it. What we're going to do is, you'll see, we're going to put this in the mill, and I'm going to go in here and take a lot of the leading edge of these runner dividers in here. We're going to mill that out of the way, and we're going to cut these dividers back some and shorten the runners. And what that's going to do is we're going to increase plenum volume by doing that. So at the same time we're shortening the runners, that correspondingly increases plenum volume. So we're going to kind of get two birds stoned at the same time, if you know what I mean. So anyhow, let's get this thing up in the mill and stab some aluminum out of here and start the process. All right, got this thing bolted down in the mill. We got a end mill here that's dull as a garden hoe, but we're gonna just try to bash some of this aluminum out of here and make some room. Alrighty, you see we've stabbed the plenum out a little bit here, what we can get to from above without mangling the plenum entrance here. We're going to do probably significantly more by hand, but that got some of the big weight out of there and expanded things a little bit. Now the other thing we got to figure out, we've got to do some port work. These gaskets are pretty close to the size we need to be. Not exactly, but they're in the ballpark. That is not right. There we go. And you can see there's a significant amount of metal that needs to come out of here to get where we're pretty close to the heads. And doing this is kind of a trick, but like, basically I'm going to kind of mock it up. You see I've got the heads mocked up on the block. I'm going to put the intake on there with gaskets to kind of see where things are, and I use the intake gasket to kind of transfer the port image over here, and then I'll start gouging metal out of there and making progress. Usually this means that we got to go back and forth several times, bunch of times, before I get this the way I like it. And anyhow, we'll see how this goes. I got red layout down here. First time ever. I always use blue, and they ran out of blue. So, not too sure how I feel about this, but we'll see if it works the same. Alright, intake's on the motor. Intake gaskets are on the motor. And I'll kind of use the bolt holes here and a flashlight. This flashlight sucks.
Because China.
So look down in here, see where the port's at. See which way I gotta go, more up, down, sideways, left, right, whatever. And once again, I'll reference these bolt holes, see where they're lining up. And a bunch of back and forth, on and off. And I'll push things out left and right until I get what I want, and see how it compares when I set it back on the motor. But I can use the gasket to get pretty damn close. A lot of times I can scribe some lines out based off of this, and then do some cutting, and not too bad to start with. So let's see how that turns out. All right, all scribed out. You can see, hopefully, maybe our scribe marks where we're going to start to move things. For a scribe, I just take a piece of tungsten and sharpen it, and it works pretty good. Only thing is sometimes I forget, then I weld with it, and then I have to make another one. But anyhow, now we know where we're going to be starting out. Now I'll get my snap gauges out, and we'll move up inside the port and see how things are. when you have the better, the kind of general rule of engine building is like the better your heads flow and the more power you're making, RPM you're using, the more critical your intake is. There comes a point where it's not about the heads anymore. You got to get the intake right, and that's just kind of how it is, which sometimes sucks because the intakes can be really difficult and obnoxious to port. But there can be, if you have everything right, you can have a lot of gains found in here. Years ago, I built a small block 400 for a customer of mine. Really nice little street type motor that run pretty good. And we got done with it. I didn't do the intake, and I said, you know, you need to let me see that intake, and the thing will pick up a little bit. And he says, I don't think it will. The intake's plenty big. It won't make any difference. And I said, okay. I'll tell you what. If it doesn't do anything, then you don't owe me nothing. And if it does, you got to pay. Well, needless to say, he paid. He was never been so happy to lose a bet because it picked up significantly, and that's because the motor could use it. Like I said, this is a long time ago. This is probably back before I was even real good at doing stuff. I was maybe just like pretty good at doing stuff, and those rules still applied. So that's just how it is. All right, real good stuff doers. We've got this thing pretty much wrapped up. You can tell, but these ports are significantly bigger pretty much everywhere. and the flow should be much improved. You can probably tell looking here how much bigger they are than they were. They were pretty small before, but they're now matched to the heads. And the bigger thing is in our plenum here. You can see it's kind of hard to tell without having a picture of the other one right kind of overlap, but before our runners came way into the plenum, right, both top and bottom. And what that did, two things: it made the runners longer, but it also effectively made the plenum smaller, right? So by moving these way back, we've increased the plenum volume and decreased the runner length, right? Now, if you had a little foot brake, 11-to-1 bracket car, this may not be the move for you. It may not be what you need to do, right? But for our application, where we're not concerned about what this thing makes at 3,500, it will probably be a net improvement. In some cases, I've seen it really help things quite a bit. But anyhow, that's a look at our intake manifold work. And honestly, like as far as hands-on, just grinding, just work, this is some of the most work that we've done in the whole project. Partly because it's just a lot of grinding, a lot of moving metal around by hand, And the other part is like doing this runner stuff in here. It's not fun. It's tedious and just takes a bunch of time. And there's easier ways to make a living, which is why nobody building race engines nowadays. This is not something that gets done a lot, something like this, because nowadays just everybody just bolts on CNC stuff or whatever. But to me, when I started building engines, when the first thing I found out was like, whoa, wait a minute, I can take metal out of here and reshape something, and somehow magically it makes more power. Sign me up, And so that's kind of what got me going in the first place, right? So even though it's not a good way to make money, that's what this series is all about. Real engine building, in my opinion. So anyhow, next, that's most of the hard work on the motor as far as preparation. So now we're going to probably start putting things together. And that'll be coming up on the very next episode of Polishing Turds.
We're polishing turds. Mediocrity kid. I can't find the words. This song is absurd. We're polishing turds. We're polishing turds.